cycle of emotion, of dependence, of devotion, flows waiting on our planet, break the habit of my mind.
Hello YouTube people, oh my god, we've been talking, who's we? Me and myself? No, this is Paul from CIOKS, or CIOKS, or CIOKS, or however you want to say this. The correct way is CIOKS, but who would know that other than Polish people? Apparently I've learned there's 40 million of them, so a lot of people would know that. We've been talking for a good 4.5 hours now, without cameras running, which is kind of a waste. So I'm already starting to realize that power supplies and their issues and design intricacies are such a big topic that I cannot possibly run the cameras long enough to cover everything. So what we're going to do is, we're going to sit here and, as you say in English, shoot the shit about stuff and other things, and hit as many topics as we can, obviously showing his product range, which is freaking cool! And I hope we get the audio happening. There is a, wait, no there is not. You can see if you plug the microphone in, and if you plug the microphone in and turn it on, then your backup microphone is actually working. So now we're good. See, and I don't cut this out because for some reason it's funny. So we got camera, and we have a mic here. I spent $400 for you, hoping that we capture everything we want captured. So, Paul from CIOKS.
Hello.
So we've been talking a lot about power supplies and things, because you guys know shit about it. As do I. I know 9 volt, plug it in. If it doesn't work, it probably needs more milliamp, whatever milliamp is. And then you need more milliamps. And some power supplies have outputs with more, and some other ones have like 100. I don't know. And then there's 12 and 18, and then there's AC, which is alternating current. I know that. And DC is direct current, where it doesn't alternate. This is about all the knowledge I have. So all of us, a lot of us don't know a lot of shit about these things. And we've collected some questions because I've compared the sound of some power supplies, because apparently some sound better, which I didn't find. I just heard that some hum, which is, we don't want that. So one of the questions obviously will be, we're going to go through your questions. We want to know, what can you do when it hums? Why does it buzz? What is the sound that you sometimes hear? Can you, we've talked about this already, put digital pedals in a daisy chain? And all these things, hopefully, we're going to get into. One of my first questions, I think we've had this on the board. 9 volt is the standard. Then you have the 12 and 18 or anything in between. Can you power a 9 volt pedal with more than 9 volt?
Well, hello everybody again. You can do this, but if the pedal is marked 9 volts, you shouldn't do this before asking the manufacturer, because some of the components inside the pedal could get damaged by the higher voltage. The difference between 9 and 12 is not that big. So, for instance, the capacitors inside a pedal, which is meant to be used with 9 volts, would typically be, say, 15 volts. So powering this device with 12 volts wouldn't damage the capacitors, but there can be other components which could get damaged. And if you read the manuals carefully, sometimes it says 9 volts, not anymore. And that means, for instance, strumming pedals, they actually state that don't use anything about this. And I haven't tried, and I wouldn't do it with a pedal.
Not with a strumming pedal, holy crap.
That would be too costly. So I always advise people to shoot an email to the manufacturer. Some of the pedal manufacturers, they actually state 9 to 18 volts, you get more headroom. Well, then there's no problems, and you actually can get another type of sound by adjusting the voltage.
That is the big question. What would you actually get out of it? And I'm very happy that the guys from Wampler, thank you Wampler, thank you Brian, and thank you whoever posted this on your blog, because Wampler, they're media crazy. They social media crazy, and follow them on Facebook, way cool. Wampler posted on their blog which pedals could benefit from being overpowered with more than 9 volt, and which you definitely shouldn't do that. I think the Thomann and something else. Is it Thomann? Not sure. Anyway, read that blog, and they said the only thing you can get out of it from going beyond the 9 volt is, as you said, more headroom, which also would mean less distortion on a pedal that distorts. It would take longer.
Not necessarily, depending on how it's built. But I mean, if you have a digital pedal like the Eventides, right? The power supply is being converted again inside the pedal to other voltages. So if you feed it with 9 volts, it draws just below 400 milliamps. If you give it more than that, like 12 volts, the current drops, because current multiplied by the voltage is the power, and the power is the same for the pedal. It's maybe a little bit complicated, but in terms of power supply, if you have 12 volts or 9 volts, so with the Eventide pedal, if you give it 12 volts, you lower the current draw of the pedal. But this is because it's digital, and it's because it's converting the voltage on the input to some other stuff.
The Wampler blog also said on the digital pedals it makes no sense. You wouldn't have any benefits from it other than maybe breaking the pedal.
Yeah. As I mentioned before with Nova Drive, or the Nova series from TC Electronics, which is meant to be powered by 12 volts. People are asking, can we power it with 9 volts? Yes, you can. And the digital circuitry inside the pedal will work exactly the same, because probably it's powered by 5 volts, which is obtained from either 9 or 12.
Keep on talking, I don't get it.
But the output of the Nova Drive, I haven't split the pedal apart, but from what I've read on the TC forum, is that the output circuitry is analog. And this analog circuit gets either 9 or 12 volt, depending on what you put inside. And if you power it with 12 volts, you get the full specifications as it is with the pedal. But if you give it 9 volt, the output circuitry will give you another lower signal-to-noise ratio. So you get a poor performance at 9 volt. Maybe nothing you could be able to hear, but some decibel apart from if you gave it the original 12 volts. If we talk a total analog pedal, which consists of either only transistors or some operational amplifiers inside, the supply voltage will have greater impact, or a big impact, on the sound you get. And typically overdrives or fast pedals, you could benefit from lowering the voltage from 9 towards maybe 5 volts, which, like people say, it simulates a dying battery.
Yes.
I mean, there you have the supply voltage for fast pedal is sort of a part of the pedal itself, because the pedal is so simply made. The electronics is so simple that if the way the transistors inside a fast pedal they operate, it's dependent on the supply voltage. And those pedals are also very what would you say, not vulnerable, how do you say, if you feed them with noisy supply voltage, where you have some hum or some ripple on it, you'll be able to hear it in your guitar signal. And having these pedals powered by more than 9 volts will also change the sound. I can't tell you exactly in which way, because there are so many different circuits. The only way to say is ask, or even better to try it. But before you turn the voltage up from the
manufacturer,
figure out whether it's okay or not.
So, bottom line, if the manufacturer says it's safe to do, but it might be a crappy sound, you can try it, and then you decide for yourself whether you want to do this. I know that on one of the big things about, I think, the Voodoo Lab was that you can get the sag effect, which you already said, which is like a dying battery. Well, I actually had a pedal where the battery was dying, and I was like, well, what's wrong? And then I couldn't figure out what's wrong with the sound until I realized, well, okay, the battery is dying. And then I realized that, okay, this is maybe something some people want, but they want it stable and they want it with a power supply. In that case, which is probably a rare case, if someone wants that particular sound from a pedal, it is beneficial to have less than 9 volts on a power supply and have that so that you can pick that. I know that I've seen that on the chocolate, that you can actually do that on one of the outputs. Any other of your power supplies where you can
Not
do
at the
that?
moment. It's a feature that I think some people who had it and have a pedal which actually changed the sound, they would like to have this option to use this knob. But not many pedals behave differently, and so it's nothing that we have on all our units. If that was a desirable feature, we would have, of course, implemented it in
But
more.
it's just something total freaks like you sometimes maybe want. I gotta admit the following. I have, I don't know, 300 pedals by now, probably more. And the Nova needs 12. I have the Warp Drive from Houston Kettner, which needs AC. Don't ask me what, 12 or something. And that's it. Every other single pedal that I have wants 9 volt DC freaking period. That's it. So when I see a power supply that gives me all these options, I say, yes, that's nice. But I would also like the option on every output to be 9 volt. If I have a power supply that has 10 outputs, 5 of them can be AC, 12 volt, 18 volt, whatever, I see it personally as a power supply that has 5 outputs. Because the other outputs are completely not usable for me. So a company that gives me the options on outputs, that's fine. But please always give me the 9 volt option. Because, as I said, in my arsenal of pedals, which is probably just a little bit more than the average guy has, a little bit, I have no use for 12 and 18. I don't have a lot of... I have one MXR pedal. So maybe you said MXR, they do...
They do a lot of 18 volts.
Okay. So in that case, if I work more with MXR, and you know Daryl Anders, we will... You're not watching this, so why am I talking to you? Then I might need those options. But for now... It's all 99999. So any pedal that has, any power supply that has extra outputs with only 12, 24, 18, whatever, right now they're pretty useless to me. So when in my selection for a power supply, I'm looking for as many 9 volt outputs as it can have and as many high milliamp outputs that it has. Is there, let's say I have one with a lot of 100 milliamps and then I have got the 200, 400, whatever. Is there a downside if I had, instead of the 100, let's say they all had 1,000? Let's be crazy, okay?
Yeah, you would have to pay €1,000 for this power supply, and it would be really heavy. So I had some guys asking me, why don't you make a box with 12 outlets, and they would be 1,000 milliamps each, and adjustable from 9 volts to 40. We could do this, but it would be a very, very heavy and very expensive power supply. So the thing about making a product is to make it small and give the customer the mix of different voltages and current ratings, which actually would fit with his setup.
So it is a trade-off. It is a compromise.
It's always yeah, it is. We actually started with something particular, your question, but we didn't actually make a list of what we were going to talk about. We should actually maybe start. Maybe you should clip it later. Start from, if you are a guitar player, think about, hey, I need a power supply. What are the thoughts you have to do yourself if you want to choose something between different brands or between different models within a brand? And one of the first questions maybe I think is, do you change your pedals a lot? Have you been playing with these 5 pedals the last 10 years and you can't even imagine that you're going to buy anything new? Because then it's easy. Then you just find the one that is the cheapest, the very matching for this setup. But if you're a kind of guy that that swaps a lot. Every month I sell a pedal or put it aside and buy a new one.
And you might accidentally buy
Get
one that
with
has
18 volts
Yeah, exactly.
or an AC pedal. Then you should have more options in one power supply. Otherwise, you will end up with a power strip full of these individual adapters,
which we really don't want.
If you don't want, then you need a bigger power supply with more options. If you can live with a few adapters, well, then that's okay. This is a way of those questions you have to ask yourself: what is it going to look like?
And expandability. Where do I want to go in the future? If I know, as I said, I've played these 5 pedals, and it's gonna be a tube screamer in the BB and all these things, and they're my staple, and I don't need anything else. Then
you can buy a unit which actually fits your needs now, because you're not going to change those.
And it's not gonna, you won't be able to add a lot more pedals later, but you're content with what you have. But if you know, right now, I have these pedals, but at some point I might want to get a digital pedal like a Strymon delay or something, you might want to think about adding...
Expandability, that's a tough word, is also one of these words. So either you buy a bigger box, bigger power supply, which has some spare outlets with different possibilities, or I must admit that I would make a little bit advertise for my own products, of course.
We're here to talk about CIOKS, CIOKS, and I, if you hadn't, I would have. We need to talk about expandability, because I told Paul that it's a very cool system. You can buy something that fits your needs right now. Let's look at the Big John right here. The Big John is actually not so big. It's relatively small. And something, we talked about, what do people buy? I have to say, a lot about a product, and especially a power supply, is how does it feel? And the only thing I can tell you about these products is, you take it in your hand, it feels sturdy, it's not super light, it's not, cheesy light, but they're compact and they feel very high-end. I love, and if you've seen my DC5 video, I love that you can take the rubber feet off. They are not glued on, they're stuck in here, but if you want to fiddle them back in, they have this fiddle back in guide. I think that's what it's kind of for. And then you fiddle it back in, you push it in, turn it, twist it a bit, and your foot is back on. So you can take the rubber feet off, but put them back in. There are screws to screw them on the board, and we're going to get into this. There's a couple of different options. They're improving continuously. So let's say you buy the Big John, and you got 100, 100, and 400, and 400, which is pretty neat already. Each of them can be 9 or 12 volt, which for me, 9's fine. And actually, it looks like it's 4 outputs, but it's not. Right here, it's just 4 sections.
It's 4 isolated sections where you have 6 outlets.
So you can split, these 100 can be divided into 2 pedals, these into 2, and these into 2 pedals, or if you actually use a daisy chain cable, possibly even more. So 6 outputs doesn't mean 6 pedals, 4 sections doesn't mean 4 pedals. That is important to understand. If you get into the right combination of pedals, where daisy chaining or sharing a section works, this can power more pedals. That is always, we always think about, okay, every output equals 1 pedal. There are pedals that can share outputs.
Yeah.
There are pedals that can share sections. Things go bing over there. Now it goes bing over here. That is, I don't know, okay.
But this unit you're holding,
yes.
It could be, if you had, say, 2 Eventides, which are very nice, or 2 H9s, which are very popular at the moment.
I don't have a single H9 Eventide. I don't have one. I have none. That is just wrong.
Okay, but they've made 3 pedals: pitch factor, time factor, and mod factor. In the beginning, there's green, blue, and red one. And then the Space came out, which is black. And then they made the H9, which is able to simulate. It can be one of these.
It can
4
one of them
at
at a time. Can be,
and this one is white. So say you have 2 of these, you could be able to power them from one each of these 2 channels. And Eventide, they are very good at these modulation chorus thing, or delays, reverbs. But as far as I know, the dirt stuff, the fuzz, the overdrive, the distortion,
they don't do that.
They don't do that. So maybe you have 2 fuzz pedals or a distortion and a tuner, which you could then connect to these outlets. And that would be a small board on say a mattress medium-size board. And in case you would buy 3 more pedals, and this is filled up, this is where this comes in.
So usually you would be thinking, okay, I got to sell my power supply, and I got to buy a bigger one that can handle in one power supply all my pedals. But with CIOKS, you don't need to do that, because you can just add what you need in an extra new block, which works like this.
Yeah, you plug this one in, and then you can expand it with, say, this is a Schizophrenic, which has 6 isolated outlets, and you just do like this, and you have 1 power block. So you power the Big John with a mains power cord here, and with 1 power cord you're powering both units, because you have this.
So as always in your pedal board, you just use 1 power cord. Obviously you need the space underneath the board, and he already pointed out that on the Pedal Train Pro, which is now called the Classic Pro, I think.
Could get back to this, but say I have the Classic Junior here. So this is the smallest in terms of how wide it is, and these could go here. So if you have the Big John in the middle, you might have to move it a little bit to make space for the Schizophrenic, right? And you would have 1 power cord powering them both here. Yeah. And now you have a sort of a power bank. It consists of 2 units which are connected together, where you have 12 outlets and 10 isolated sections.
So when you put them in between here, can you still plug it in?
Well, in the set you have some standoffs. They have to be raised 8 millimeters to get into the plug.
But that's included in the.
This is of course included.
Okay.
Here. Yeah.
Good. Well, we talk about how to put them under boards in a minute. Yes. So yeah, you can do that to expand. Obviously, expanding your power supply is an important issue when you're planning your board. Either you pick, as you said, the one that fits your board right now, and you know you're never going to do more, or you already buy a bigger one knowing that you're crazy like most of us are, and you buy more and more pedals. Or you find a company like his where you are able to expand with your pedals. And
we've shown that this link system, what we call, and you can still, if you link these units together, you still have this auxiliary outlet where you have the mains available for either the 3rd power supply, or you have say these two guys here. They do only DC. So if you have a tube pedal, or you add one, you'd be able to have an adapter here by means of what we call mains. Do I have it here? I guess so. It's here. This guy. It converts this plug into a wall socket of a type which is either American or European or.
So you could just plug in anything.
British, yeah. So you have, I have this. It comes with an adapter, so it don't fall out. So you actually have. You can put an adapter here. Is it visible? Yeah. And you actually also have. For your iPhone charger.
That is cool.
So
clever.
Yeah.
Okay, that is very cool. So definitely an expandable system. If you don't want to fork over the money to buy the big one in the beginning for your 3 pedals.
Yeah.
The really big one.
Here we go.
Which of course, if you know you're going to be crazy and gas has struck you, the gear acquiring syndrome,
I don't think
then
it's visible here. We are off the.
There you go. You could just buy the big one that can do everything. For me, obviously, I could either say, well, I have different power supplies for the different kinds of pedal boards I do, but something that I have on the table in my daily work, where I just have a different pedal on the table, it might need 400, it might need maybe AC, who knows. It's nice if I have something flexible, so I don't have to hunt around for a power supply that works. So I usually have something on the table right in front of me. For that, obviously, the chocolate, with all its options, might be too much, but in terms of finding exactly the right output, it has whatever output I need. Yeah. Let's look at some questions before we go into some practicalities of getting things under a board and me pointing out some things that I noticed. Where my question would be, is it unsafe to run pedals on unisolated PSUs? Power supply units? Is that
unsafe? So you don't get struck by the lightning, or
I
think
guess
he's
so.
meaning if it's getting you more hum, or does it make your sound better?
No, I think
to keep it
I think he
isolated,
means in terms of damaging the pedals. But
well, if you try to, I think it is possible to make a stupid connection where you don't have things isolated, so you actually damage something. But if you have 3 9-volt pedals and you daisy chain them, or even an 18-volt pedal which you daisy chain with a 9-volt pedal and give it all 9 volts, nothing will happen. If you mix up polarity, we should have started actually by taking these things in the right order.
Yeah, there is no right
DC,
order.
voltage, milliamps, polarity, and type of plugs.
And we would have still forgotten things. Let's go into it now. Come on.
Okay.
Let's go.
We were talking about how big a power supply it should be. How many outlets do you need? How much power do I need? We have on our supplies, we have different current ratings of those outlets. The most standard current rating is 100 milliamps. So all the older analog pedals will fit below 100 milliamps. Let me say it because it's very important. A pedal that draws, say, 20 milliamps, it doesn't matter if you plug it in 100 milliamp, 200 or 400 milliamps outlet. You won't give it more current. I mean, the pedal will draw the same amount of current no matter which outlet you use.
You offer it 100, but it's only going to use up 20.
Yes. But if you have a mix of pedals that draw different currents, you should try to use the smallest available outlet for a particular pedal. Because if you use your 400 milliamps pedal on a 20 milliamp, if you use 20 milliamp pedals on your 400 milliamps outlet, you might be short of high power outlets for your digital pedals.
Yes, of course.
So if you think about buying a power supply, you should make a list of your pedals, figure out which voltage they need. Is it DC or AC? And how much current they need. You can normally read these figures on the manuals of the pedals, but not necessarily always. And sometimes the manufacturer of the pedal states a milliamp figure, which is not the figure which matches the current draw of the pedal, but it matches the original adapter which comes with the pedal.
Which again, if you have an adapter that can offer 1,000 milliamps and the pedal only draws 10, they might have supplied it with a 1,000 milliamp adapter. Because
and they could have written 1,000 milliamp on the pedal, so people read 9 volt 1,000 milliamp, 9 volt 1,000 milliamp. This is matching. Good, I can use it.
But it doesn't necessarily mean the pedal actually draws that.
No.
What we have here, and we're going to do this a bit later, we have a couple of pedals here that on the pedal, which is way cool, state how many milliamps the pedal pulls. And looking at at those ratings, it looks realistic. 40
it's
and 15.
realistic, and I know this one, the TC Electronic ones, is probably okay. It reads 40 milliamps.
Yeah.
So and it's an overdrive, and yeah. So that's probably okay.
But he's got a little gadget where we can actually check that, which we're going to do in a bit. So okay,
back to this. So you have to figure out how many pedals. Make a list. What voltage do you need for each of them? Is it AC or DC? In most cases it will be DC. Try to figure out what are the milliamp ratings. If you write, I do a lot of support work by answering emails to my customers, and if you do the work or some of my work, it would be easy for me to answer the email and you get the reply faster. So because if you have a pedal which I don't have in my database of pedals which are measured. I don't have this one. This is a Mesa pedal, and it says 50 milliamps. If you actually stated that you have this pedal and it says 9 volt, 15 milliamps, I can tell you how to power this guy. Otherwise, I would have to search for the manual of this pedal and figure out what it says. And if I have to do it with 15 pedals, answering this one email would take a long time. But you can do it. Most of this work yourself, by just reading what's on the pedal or in the manual. And then there is the important thing is to look at those pedals which are sort of crazy, either high current in terms of milliamps. Everything above 100 milliamps is non-standard. So
yes,
we try to divide. I say low draw. It's below 100 milliamps. Medium is around everything above 100 up to 200, and above 200 you have high current draw, I would say. The last thing is which type of plug do you need and what polarity. But this thing is something you can do as the last thing to figure out if the cables supplied with the unit you're buying, they actually include one of these crazy cables you need. If they don't, you have to order it separately.
Usually it is pretty standard to have the standard 9
the standard
volt cable.
Boss standard. The Boss standard is a barrel plug which is 5.5 millimeters on the outside and 2.1 millimeters on the inside, and it's got minus inside. So it's tip negative, barrel positive, it says. And everything else is non-standard.
And sometimes, or pretty, if it's a decent power supply, it should come with at least one polarity reversing adapter.
Or polarity reversing, or just a cable which is reversed.
Yes, either that.
I mean, we supply, when you buy our DC-10, you get like 2 bundles of cables. And these are all black. And these are all the Boss standard cables in different length. And then you get another bundle which is a little bit more colored, and now the red one is the same size as the Boss standard, but you've got plus in the middle. And this one would be used for Moog pedals, and the Impress delay. Who else? Some positive ground pedals using the Foss pedals like Proctavia from Voodoo Lab, or a 69 pedal from, which company is that? That's Full Tone. Full Tone, yeah.
I was thinking 76.
But there's the different pedals that needs plus in the middle. Then we've got the green one. It's also plus in the middle, but 2.5 millimeters.
Different size, okay.
Yeah. This would be for all Eventides.
Okay. I didn't know they used a different.
And now you can actually use this one on a pedal which needs this one, but
not
it would not the other way, obviously. And this one could give you a little bad connection, you know, because you have a pin which is too small for that hole.
I know that problem.
Could be, yeah. So, the other we can get back to. They are more complicated, but right. But if you need like 2 red cables because you have 2 Moog pedals, one is included. You have to order one separately. It's rather important. You get the power supply from the shop. You go back home and you're missing one cable.
Well, if you're a guy who has like 5 Moog pedals on your board, you pretty much should know that you're a freak. And that you might have to contact the company to get a couple more cables. I mean, that's a given. You know that you're not going to find anything right out of the box that's going to work for your board.
You get one, so you can try if it
you can see if it works, and if that works, you're good, and you move on. So obviously that is something that you have to figure out. Then again, as I said, I've got over 300 pedals and have, as of yet, no use for that. Because I don't have Eventides, I don't have Moog pedals. We know these exist, and they come bundled in there for the freaks that have that stuff. But the standard still, 9 volt DC standard.
Next step would be, I would say, do you have 1 AC pedal or 2? 2 would be very rare, but you could have an old whammy or a tube pedal by say Mesa Boogie or whatever, H&K.
Yeah, they
Hughes
and Kettner.
And Kettner, yeah. Or Magic Storm by Yamaha, right? Or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, if you have an AC pedal, make sure that the power supply have 1 AC outlet for this pedal. Which
is definitely rarer than anything else.
There you divide in 2 parts. Those that are purely DC or those which also have an AC outlet. And you can do 2 things. Either you you want to have this AC pedal powered by your power supply, or you can live with one separate adapter for this crazy pedal, or you have a power supply with an extra outlet where you could put this adapter, so you don't have to have a power strip.
Oh, okay. That actually really speaks for your system.
Yeah, I could say so. Yes.
Yes, definitely. A question: if I use a power supply for all the DC stuff and then an extra adapter, let's say the one that was supplied with my pedal, separately, can I have any negative side effects compared to using a power supply that has an AC and DC section built in?
No. I would say it's a good question. Many manufacturers of pedals, they state almost every use this pedal only with the supplied original adapter. This is because they, of course, want to sell the adapter as well.
Obviously.
And want to be sure that the pedal is supplied with the correct voltage. Now, if the specification of... There's only voltage, AC or DC, and the current. But there are pedals which are supplied with a non-regulated power supply, which says, say, 9 volt. And this adapter, when not loaded fully, would give you, say, 13 volts. And those guys who take this pedal and try to power it with 9 volt regulated will find the LED on the pedal not lighting up, and it sounds strange. Why is that? And then you have to know that this original adapter was non-regulated, and you actually have to use a higher voltage to power this pedal. So you have to give it, say, 12 volts. So it says 9 volts on the pedal. It doesn't say non-regulated, give it more. But if you dig into this, you know, if you use non-original power supply with multiple outlets, you have to use 12 volts for this pedal. Another example of this was the Boss pedals. They are still popular. In the old days, there were two kinds: the PSA and ACA. The PSA adapter was regulated 9 volts. So no matter what current you draw, 5 milliamps, 100 milliamps, or 200 milliamps, you get 9 volts. The AC adapter was non-regulated. And at idle or very small currents, you get maybe 12, 13 volts. So these pedals, if you have an old Boss pedal that says ACA, an old chorus for instance, you should power it by with 12 volts. But if it's in a daisy chain, it's okay with 9 volts. And it's because it's a little bit crazy. In those pedals, you have a little resistor and a diode, which is meant to secure your pedal from reverse polarity. But on this resistor and this diode, the voltage actually drops to 9 volts. So this ACA pedal by Boss can be powered with a 9 volt battery. So the circuitry inside...
You lost me somewhere. I'm starting to get a brain hemorrhage here. Whoa.
Okay.
See, because I do this, and most of you do this, and whoa. Yeah, okay, just don't play those old Boss pedals. Sell them on eBay and buy a new one.
To make it simple, if it says 9 volt PSA, give it 9 volts. If it said ACA, give it 12 volts. Very simple. That's
Good,
it.
see, I can deal with that. But actually what I meant is, see, for me, I have a good feeling if everything's coming from one place.
Yeah.
So,
but we didn't answer the question. I had a little...
okay, you went
PSA.
Okay,
so the thing about whether you should use the original adapter or you use a multiple outlet power supply, you can always, if you know the voltage and you know the current and the polarity of the plug, you can always use another adapter, but you have to be sure about this voltage and polarity thing.
Okay.
So if I was building a board, I would of course like to have just one power supply which is able to supply every pedal I have. And have a little bit of spare outlets, maybe for a friend coming over with a pedal, so I don't have to disconnect some of the pedals I'm using. I still have maybe 2 outlets, which one low current, one high current, then you can do a little bit of mixing. But once you figure out that you have one AC pedal, then you have maybe 2 power supplies to choose from. If it's only DC, well, then you have more options. Then if you have one AC pedal or not, this would be then the next step would be how many of these high current draw pedals you have. So how many Strymon do you have? Do I have Eventides? Try to list them. Electroharmonics, they made quite a lot of pedals recently, which are about this size, which are based on the same DSP platform, like the Freeze, Cathedral, and they draw around 160. This would be a sort of a medium power thing.
I've had the Freeze here, and I looked at the power supply that came with it, because it came with the power supply. Actually, it's still in the box over there. And also the Turnip Greens, which came with its own power supply. And the power supply said 9.6 volts. And I thought, but my power supply only supplies 9 volts. Does that mean that I now need to use the supplied power supply? And my thinking was, nah, I think they just give me a power supply that gives me a little bit more than it needs. It'll probably run beautifully with any standard 9 volt output. And I kind of, let's say accidentally, used an output on the power supply that I used that had 400 milliamps. So I didn't even notice that it needed more, but it ran fine with standard 9 volt. Even though the supplied power supply gives me 9.6. Should I have used 9.6?
Actually, I now come up with an idea why they actually do make a power supply with 9.6 volts. It could be, I'm just guessing, that most of pedals, they have this diode on the just after the input socket, which prevents you from using the wrong polarity. And the voltage drop on the diode is approximately half, 0.6 volts.
Okay.
So if you have a battery, you can't turn the battery wrong. Well, you can, but you have to hold it. On the, if you use this battery clip, you can't really miss the polarity. Yeah. And that is supplying the pedal with 9 volts. But the input jack, there is always, or quite often, a diode. And then if you just use 9 volts, the pedal's electronics gets this voltage drop, less voltage, so that would be 8.5. If you're able to hear this 0.5 volts in terms of signal to noise ratio, I would say you have pretty good ears.
So you can just power it.
Yeah, and I would say that because we've heard about this 9.6, we are not stating our voltages with a digit after the 9.0, because the 9.0, 9.1, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. But we have adjusted the 9 volts up to 9.2, 9.3. So if you measure the exact voltage which come out of our 9 volt outlets, it's slightly more than 9 volts. Okay. So I don't get emails, hey, my outlet is only given 8.9. So I would rather have it varies around 9.2.
So these tolerances don't affect really anything.
This is my opinion,
yeah.
But there are guys there who can hear what type of battery is sitting in their wire, and well, if
yeah, go away, those guys. I'm sorry, seriously. I'm shocked a little bit because I'm looking at my little recording thing. It already says 43 minutes. What the fuck? And we haven't even begun to talk about power supplies. We're gonna have to answer a few more questions, then shut this down, and then actually go into the CIOKS power supplies and how to put them under boards and stuff. Holy crap, we could literally be here the whole weekend and talk about power. Arguably one of the most boring elements of a pedal board, but can't do without. You know what, it's like I don't know, food, clothing, shoes. What you do, everyone needs. I mean, whether you need...
I would rather say air or food. Yeah, food is...
I mean, you need the power. I mean, these pedals don't run on, I don't know, just you wishing them to run.
Maybe in 20 years or 50 they would run on wind power.
Bluetooth power. Let's see what other questions we have here. Go ISO or go home? That's not a question.
Should we comment this isolating things? I mean,
yes, tell me about it.
it's a big thing. I mean, all rigs are different. You have different cables, different pedals, different environments in terms of you could live just beside of a big transformer station outside your house. So no matter what you do here, you'll be having hum from outside. But as a rule of thumb, if you have analog pedals that draw a little bit of current, you can daisy chain them with no big issues. But again, I mean, it depends on what pedals you have.
Always just try to
mixing a digital pedal with an analog one in the same daisy chain is more probable that you get some troubles with either some hum or some hiss. I mean, humming. Oh my God, it's a big subject, but this more high-frequently hiss or clicks from things being turned on and off, or if you can hear the frequency of your delay, even if it's not turned on, it's typically a digital pedal daisy chained with some analog pedal. If you have some hum, there can be loads of reasons. I mean, you can divide it into two different ways of getting hum into your signal. Either is airborne, so it's a proximity of a pedal to, for example, a power supply with a main transformer inside, or it's coming through cables. So how would I say it? The hum could come through cables, yeah. A daisy chain, you ground loops, yeah, ground loops. How do you get a ground loop? You have, if these are two pedals, you have them connected with a signal cable, which has a ground lead or the shield, right? And if you have a daisy chain, then you have the minus, the ground of the supply, also connecting these two. So you have ground this way and you have ground this way. This gives you a loop.
Ah, okay.
And this is a little coil with just one winding. So if you have a big cable with the big lights for the stage just below your pedal board, this cable would have electromagnetic field which would generate a current to flow in this loop. This current, because of the resistance of this loop, would make a voltage, and this voltage would go through your signal chain and you would get it out in your amp. So this is a ground loop, and if you have isolated outlets for each pedal, you don't have ground loops in your system. So having a daisy chain and some ground loops doesn't necessarily mean that you will get hum, but you can have a setup on your pedal board that works perfectly fine with no hum in your studio or your home, and then you come to a concert place where there are some thick cables placed below the stage, and there you have a problem, and you don't know why you have it.
Which is exactly what someone said on this video. They said it's all nice and dandy and they work totally fine and sound pretty much the same in your setup, but take this, which obviously can't, take these setups that you have shown to a stage and it looks very different. And that's when it really comes down to it. Does it work in an environment where you have the lights and big ass power lines going? And obviously that's something I can't test here because I don't have that here.
I've heard some stories about Santana playing a place, and after some time he realized there was some kind of big refrigerator in the back of this place, where every time he turned on, it ruined his sound. But it's just that's another way of getting some undesired sounds in your system.
So as far as go ISO or go home, which I don't think was a question, but just some stupid ass comment. But we just talked about the stupid ass comment, and hey, you won. Yes, you can daisy chain things. Yes, you could get away with daisy chaining even digital pedals with analog pedals. It can work. It cannot work. You can daisy chain pedals without a problem. You can play big ass gigs and it can work. But if you want to be safe and avoid these problems as best as you can, then having each pedal on its own isolated output on the power supply is recommended. Can we say that?
Yeah, you could say that. This would definitely minimize the risk of getting ground loop problems. If you don't have any ground loops in your system...
Which is why you need this, because there you have enough individual outputs. See, this is me selling his product now. So, but I mean, yes, if you want to be safe, do this. I have daisy-chained pedals, and it was not a problem. I've daisy-chained analog and digital pedals. Actually, in the power supply demo that I did, it wasn't a problem. But again, if you want to make sure that your board works in as many situations as possible, get a bigger power supply with more isolated outputs, if you can afford it. If not, you clearly cannot afford it, so don't.
Then you go home, right?
Then you go home. Exactly, go ISO or go home. So we have, let's see, what else? There's Voodoo Labs. Would have liked to see Voodoo Lab in there. Well, me too, but I don't have one. I would like to pose the question. Let's suppose
we have one here, but it's just to. I have brought a few competitor stuff. Not that we should talk about this, because that's not.
We're not going to bash the competition. We did that when the cameras weren't running.
Yeah, so we have them, but we are not going to use them. No. At least not on camera, maybe.
We know that the Voodoo Lab has been around forever, and that it does its job.
Putting this one away, I would say I have a great respect for this company. They've been around for the same amount of time that we have, and they make good stuff. So and
it works. So yeah, let's see. We have let's suppose you have 10 pedals, but you only can afford a power supply with 7, less than 10. Thank you for pointing out that 7 is less than 10. I love that. You have to daisy chain. Is there a tip on which pedals can be daisy chained? I think we just talked about that. Preferably to avoid hum. You have to try it. We just said that. For example, daisy chain those that are not going to be used at the same time.
Actually, I'm thinking about this. 2 digital pedals that are daisy chained, that can be actually could be good thing in terms of ground loops, because those pedals are digital. So hum coming from the input of the power supply will be suppressed, I guess. So it's a bad idea in terms of high frequency clicking and hiss. But in terms of hum, you could probably get away by daisy chain digital pedals as well. So because analog pedals, we talk about this power supply rejection ratio, blah blah blah.
Of course, he talked about it. I just nodded and pretended I know what he's talking about.
The simple analog pedals, they would be more susceptible of letting a ground loop in which you have the 50 or 100 hertz going round would more easily go into guitar signal through an analog pedal than the digital pedal. So, but I would say try it out. It was
if the professional who built these things says you have to try it out, then you have to try it out. There are probably a gajillion possible combinations of pedals.
No, but say you have AC10, right? You bought this one because you have a tube pedal, which you plug in, or you have a whammy, right?
Let's show quickly what this has. We have DC sections, and then we have 2 AC sections with 800 milliamps each.
This middle section can actually be either AC or DC. So this power supply can be able to supply 2 AC pedals. But if you have one, you plug it into the outlet 9. Say you have an Eventide, you can plug it in there, and then you have 4 outlets with DC, and say you have 6 DC pedals. So you have to have 2 outlets supplying 2 pedals, or 1 outlet supplying 3 pedals. So if you have 3 analog pedals that draw 20 milliamps each, you could just put them on a daisy chain and plug them into channel 1. And if this is working for you, you set it up and you receive no hum, it sounds really good, leave it this way. But if you find that this generates some kind of hum, try to swap around those pedals, maybe make a split on first outlet and second outlet, so you have 2 on this and 2 of this, and see how this works. It's also how you have these daisy chains. I mean, a loop where you have to have, which is disturbed by some electromagnetic field, has to have an area. I mean, a loop like this would have more field lines inside than a loop which is like this. So it's also a question how the small cables supplying your pedals from the power supply are placed on your pedal board.
Okay.
So maybe one combination of pedals connected to the power supply would give you some hum, but you just move around the pedals on the pedal board without plugging them in and out would actually solve your problem.
Which brings me to a question I have. Let me see if there's anything here. Let's see if there's any important questions. A lot of people are answering questions that other people have posed, which I love that you guys help each other out. Okay, the amount of humans. Okay, we're good here. One thing that when I build a board, and I haven't been doing this long, guys. So I start and I set up the pedals the way I want. And that's all great and I'm totally happy. This looks cool and the looper goes here and everything's fine. And then you start wiring things up. And then you get the first tear in your eye because you don't have the right length of cables. Which means, oh damn, this patch cable would be, that's the perfect quality. I don't want to go to my bad patch cables. It's a perfect quality cable, but it's missing this tiny little bit of length. So you start moving the pedals around. You're making compromises in the pedal positioning because of your patch cables. Which is...
stupid, I think.
Yes.
I think if you've bought pedals for what I said to you, for 2,000 euros, right?
Yeah.
And then you're not placing them there where you actually want to have them because you want to save 20 euros on a cable.
Yes, exactly. So
temporarily you can do this, but you should make a list. What cables do you need?
But the length of cables should be determined by where the positioning of the pedals has to be. Which is why something like evidence audio cable, I'm going to have to plug these right here. I have to plug these and I have plugs here. So we've got these plugs which are super high end, and we've got the super high end cable very thin, and you actually make the length that you need. Which again brings us to different kinds of people. You said if you know what your board looks like, you buy the power supply that fits your board. Which means if you know what your board looks like and your board has that shape and function for quite a while, you make the length, you buy the cables, make the length perfect, and it's installed. Me personally, I build different boards all the time. So I talked to Evidence and I said, I don't just need the amount of cables I need pretty much 3 times the amount because I pre-manufacture different lengths. So, hello. So, I have made myself evidence audio cables, and so here's length number 1.
I want to have a look.
And here is like a really long one, so if I need to go from A to B on the board. So these will not match a specific length, but I simply have more cables of differing length, because I don't want to, when I build a board, every time make cables, because the boards last a week or 2 or 3 for certain videos and then I take them apart. So I would be the guy who changes his board around all the time, which means cable length needs to be flexible.
Okay.
But that brings me to...
I can tell you that we have in our assortment the most standard Boss type of cables. We have in 15, 30, 50 and 80 centimeter length, which is where you have a possibility of choosing quite enough with 4 different lengths. But if that is not enough and 80 centimeters is not long enough, we have this extension cable which is 50 centimeter.
That is exactly where I was going to go, because once you've positioned your pedals and you manage to get them in the position where you want them with the audio cables, and I usually use a looper and all this, and then you find out that your stupid power cables are not long enough, because with most companies, or a lot of companies that I've used, you get a standard length cable. So a lot of them will of course be too long because the pedals are right next to the power supply, and then I can't get to the other side of the board, and then it starts to, you have to start to find the perfect position for the power supply, which is of course sometimes limited by where it can sit. And you said you can get an extension, which is great. That's good to know, because sometimes I build huge boards and the length simply isn't enough.
this is it, right? And you can, any cable.
You just extend it.
Yeah, this is 30 centimeters, right? And the extension is 50. So you go like this, and
okay, so that's good to know.
this is one way of doing it. But the professional pedalboard builders, for you are a professional musician, you go to David in LA Sound Design in LA. He makes some wonderful boards, and he sets up the pedals, and he makes the audio patch cables in the right length, so they match it. And he also makes the power cables in the lengths you need.
That would have been my question. Is there a way?
We have this open-end flex cable, which is 120 centimeter.
That's more than enough.
Which you can cut to length, but then you have to solder the plug.
Okay,
and then that you have to buy separately. But what we are just about, it's actually after a meeting with David when we went to the NAMM show. We talked, and he didn't like the straight version of our plugs that go into power supplies. So this is a prototype, but it's angled, so you're saving a little bit of space. He's always making the pedal boards on just a piece of plywood, I guess. So the pedal, but the power supply is on top. So if you have a plug which is angled here, you're saving 1 inch of space maybe. He also pointed out that he would rather see a round shape of cable because it's easier to make it look nice.
Yes.
So this is also round for you, David. And we made it. This is 120 centimeter, but the cables which will come into production will be 1.5 meter, which in feet would be like 6 feet, something like that.
Less,
5,
about 5 feet.
5, 6 feet, around 5, 6 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, and I planned so you buy it in a set where you get the most standard plug in the little zip bag. So the only thing you have to do is cut, and then you have to do a little bit of soldering. So you can make the professional boards yourself with this cable.
Okay, because that would have been my question. So they're already working on that without me bitching about it. Because so far I've only seen one system where you actually can do the length of cable yourself, which is the gig rig system, which is granted, Daniel, great system, but I've never used it because frankly I don't have the money to use the gig rig system, and the gig rig system consists of a lot of little elements. So you have the generator, the distributor where you click in their cables, which is cool. Then you can make your own length, but then that goes to individual little boxes if you want the 400 milliamps.
I would say this system, I know how it works. I never played with it. But I would say that it's the guitar player, which is who is good at playing guitar and not necessarily doing stuff with wires. He would rather have a system where he could plug in just 9 volt, 9 volt, 12 and stuff like that.
System,
if you're a technician making a board for a guitar player, then you would maybe be fine with stripping those leads off and putting them in the different gig rig thing.
Yeah.
In terms of reliability, I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't like to say something bad about a system.
I've never worked with it. I don't know.
So, but here if like you have a bunch of patch cables in different length, you can also have a bunch of our cables. You actually get quite a lot of cables with our supplies. I have a feeling that that we supply a larger mix of length and types of plugs, which you have to buy separately if you buy a competition power supply. But you can check for yourself which cables are included. It's on the website, and then you can get extra extension leads, so you can have a mix of different lengths.
If you check on Thomann, I actually saw that from the CIOKS you can get different, like a whole cable kit, like an extra kit if you wanted to. What was I going to say in terms of cables? Bringing me to a couple of questions that always stood out immediately when seeing your power supplies before handling them. Obviously, you immediately see the RCA connection instead of the standard BOS connector, which is pretty much what every power supply accepts, which makes, without ever having used them before, I immediately had a feeling that we're dealing with a different kind of quality here, because an RCA connector has a stronger connection than a normal let's call it BOS plug.
When I started 24 years ago, I had to make a decision. What are we going to do? It's a long time ago, but one thing was that the mechanical fixture of an RCA plug is stronger than a DC plug. So also, as you said, the feeling of plugging it in is maybe better, or it feels nicer to plug in. It doesn't, but it's more fixed inside the socket. The other thing is, of course, that we would like to sell some cables as well. And so if you buy
at least he's honest. I mean, come on, you got to give the guy. He's honest.
I'm trying to do business as well.
Okay, come the fuck out. This is way cool, because obviously, if you want more cables, you can't go to your. Excuse me, I'm gonna show this. You can't go to your drawer that is completely full with power cables. This is all just power cables. They're completely useless to me with these power supplies. So I'm going to have to hump his leg later to get some more
But say you're a guitar company. Everything is jacks, right? Standard jack. And a guitar company that make a 10,000 euro guitar. And they just want to make sure that the cable the guitar player is using for this guitar is not a crappy cable for €5. So they make their own plug. And they also sell the cables. So they make sure that the cables are okay, because
not that happens, but it would make sense.
Probably you can go and buy, say, a Vodolab power supply, which is high quality gear, but you're missing some extra cables. So you go to anywhere and buy those cables, but they can be made not but Vodolab, but because I imagine that Vodolab cables are also okay. The amount of copper inside the cable is actually okay to take the power from A to B. So you're buying some cables which are totally crappy.
So you basically ensure that people are using
my cables
high quality cables with your product, so no one says, "Hey, it's humming." It's
not
crap.
that. I mean. Again, I'm an engineer, so if these plugs were made of gold, this one makes you sound better. Gold is a better material used in different kind of high-end plugs because it doesn't oxidate, it doesn't rust. But I've seen people using our supplies making their own cables with high-end RCA plugs used in audio equipment, where the plugs they used are more expensive than the power supply itself. And I would say it looks really nice,
but it doesn't make a difference.
But doesn't make really sense. And if the cable for power is shielded or not, I would say that is probably not making any difference either. So the important thing is where if you have a pedal that draws, say, 600 milliamps, and you have too little copper inside, so you will have a significant voltage drop. So if you have 9 volts on the outlet of the power supply, you might only have 8 volts at the pedal if the cable is crappy.
Okay, so you just make sure that the quality of the power supply gets actually safely to the pedal, which makes total sense. And most of us are not like me. They don't have a big ass drawer full of power cables, because right now my CIOKS cables are in a different drawer, so I don't mix them up. So I go over there, and because I don't want to look for these, I actually have my extra CIOKS power cable drawer. We have to put some of these back in there. The other thing I was going to point out, we're talking about proprietary, that's a good word, connection for the little power cables, but there's also a semi-proprietary connection for the mains power, which simply has something to do, and I was going to bitch about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
you're not the first one.
Because of course I have my normal main power cable. I have 20 of them stashed in my power cable drawer, which I can just grab any time. but now if I want to use one of these, I need to look for the slightly special one. But that also has something to do with the size again.
Yeah, I can tell you, AC10 and DC10 were the first professional units we made, and I wanted them to be as flat as possible. And fitting in the more standard C14 or 13, depending on its socket or plug, was simply not possible. It would make the whole power supply maybe 4 millimeters taller. So this Mickey Mouse C5 or C6 block is smaller, but if you have a laptop, I mean, musicians' laptops, it should be quite common. They are very common for laptops power supplies. Not as common as those here in the professional music business, but not totally non-existing ones. So we use them in these simply because of space.
And it's way cool how it's actually secured so that if you pull on it, you can't pull it out. That's actually a very neat, simple way.
This was to make it nice so you don't have it. Some people say it's stupid because they can access it easily. So it's, again, you have two kinds of people: those who think it's very nice design feature, and those who think this is a strange cable. I can't find a spare one, and I cannot fit it in here.
You know
but
what?
when we are here,
what did you say? What is it called?
C5 or C6. It's an IEC standard 60320.
C5. We're just gonna, because if I need something like this and I want a spare one, I'll go on Amazon. Let's find out. C5 cable. Cable.
Or Mickey Mouse.
Here we go. C5 cable, Belkin laptop AC power cable, 1.8 meters, 16 euro. Here is one from König, 2.5 meters, 6 euro. So, really not hard to find. This is 3 euro. This is 200. What? Ah, they're gonna get you 14 of them.
But again, talking about mains power cords, the first 100 power supplies we sold, we didn't get the delivery of the Volex cables, which are the vendor for IBM, and we bought the first 100 we bought on like Amazon, some place on the internet, and they were totally crappy. So we got many back of those. So be careful when buying mains cables. They can sort of disconnect your pedal board.
So don't buy a cheap and crappy one as a spare cable.
These broke. These pins were not filled with plastic. They were empty on these.
Okay.
And if you cut it, you found out that it was almost only plastic and no copper inside the cable. Copper is more expensive than plastic.
Because for me, I highly recommend if you go to a gig,
use the original cable.
Use the original cable, but don't just go with one, because anything can happen, and finding one of these cables at a gig
can be.
If someone just rolls over it with something sharp and cuts your cable, all of a sudden, that is, I have to say this, using these cables and those power supplies, your board could be rendered useless. So get a second cable, either get it directly from them or get it from Amazon or someone, but get a good one.
This is why we actually there'll be more new products to come, but we made a product for Eventide, which is called Eventide Power Factor 2, because it's the second one we made. And on this one, we've used the more common, bigger socket for.
But size, of course, is an issue, because the DC5 fits under a freaking nano. Okay, we're going to look at pedal boards in the second video we do.
We one more comment when you decide on the power supply. Are you a touring musician? Not all our power supplies have a switch where you can switch from 230 to 115. This is also an issue when you're considering which unit to buy. If you often go from Europe to US to play a gig, you normally don't bring your amps and stuff, but you bring your guitar and you bring your pedals.
Yeah.
If you have a power supply which has switchable mains 120 or 230, the only thing you have to do is flip the switch and have a US power cord.
Sure.
for some people, it doesn't really matter if you only play in Europe or just at home. But if you do play abroad, that's a nice feature.
I did an interview with Juan Alderete from the Mars Volta. Juan Alderete de la Peña. Juan. He also does pedal demos, but he also played for gigantic bands. He's a bass player, and he said he's a developer. I think he's developing a power supply, or he's involved with MXR in the new ISO, whatever. But he said that switch is absolutely necessary because with the Mars Volta and these bands that he played with, he was touring all over the world, and he needs that switch. He says without that switch, a power supply for him is useless completely.
We have different priorities when choosing the power supply. Some people don't care that they get an additional adapter. Some people don't care that they get the switch. So you have to look for yourself which of the things are important for you.
There is the bottom line is there's no solution that's going to fit every player. Even if you have the solution that will give you everything you ever wanted, like the chocolate. Chocolate. I don't know how to say that. Chocolate. Yeah. Because it's CIOKS. That's...
I got it now.
Oh, yeah, now we're getting it. Even if you had that, well, then you could bitch about that it doesn't fit under a Metro. You could bitch about that it's heavier than a DC-5. There's always a pro and con with any power supply.
Henning, the good thing about here... power supplies, you can say yes or no. With this hum thing, you can have maybe, and you can, but there's no sort of taste. Well, you can say that you like the brown color and you like this, or the pink one, which we can show later.
We are going to talk about the pink one.
But there should be an answer on all those questions. Which voltage? It's very sort of engineering thing, with strings, cables, and pedals, you have different tastes in sound. Two people can have different opinion on if this sounds good or bad. But in terms of if this outlet can power this pedal or not, I would say there's an answer yes or no, or yes it can, but it's sounding bad because it's underpowered or something like that. But you can measure actually if it's a yes or no. So the last question in this section will be here all weekend, and we're going to talk about. I think I definitely want to do 2 more videos for you guys. One more video is I want to show the whole product range of CIOKS in front of the little camera right here, and simply show you the ins and outs and the possibilities, so that you don't have to go on the website. Yeah, we can start with the smallest Adam and with chocolate. That could be maybe one video.
Yeah, and
I had an idea that we showed how to mount the smallest unit under the flat boards. And we could have a very short video actually how the DC-10 and AC-10. The DC-10 is actually one of the most popular products we have. And the pedal train, which is the company making maybe most of the pedal boards on this planet, how to mount these DC-10 power supplies on the older and new version of
That's exactly what I want to do. I want to show the whole product range, and then we show you how to mount these. And obviously, there will be a special section on the pink thing that we're going to have to talk about, because I'm going to have to ask this guy what the fuck he was thinking. But that is in a different video, because we've been here for like 80 minutes now, and I don't care, because as you can clearly see, this is an issue that we need to talk about. How do you power your shit? Because you spend all this money, and then you, as you said, have the wrong cables, or short cables, or you save on patch cables.
The biggest problem is if someone, it doesn't matter if it's a power supply, you spend a little bit more than you have expected on a thing that doesn't have sound inside. You bring it home and it doesn't do what you thought it would do. And it's like with the program, I think it does exactly what you tell it to, and not what you think it should do.
If you have the right power supply, you can simply not think about your power supply. And we want to think about the guitar, the wood, the notes, screwing the girl in the first row. We don't want to think about, do I have the right power supply? So if you spend a little bit more than you're willing to spend, which is pretty much always the case when you buy a power supply, you don't want to spend the money, because it's not fun to spend 200, 300 euro on a power supply.
But you should do it once.
Yes, do it once and do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be more. I have a million things more to say, but I'm not gonna, because that's for more videos. If you've made it this far, wow.
Yeah, if someone's actually watched the whole thing here,
flying crap.
I maybe we should make a big shout so people wake up to turn off the equipment they have.
Hey, this guy came here from Poland to talk to you about how to best power your board, and he's super kind, not even, saying, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. He's even sitting here showing Voodoo Labs, so come on. If anyone's pushing his gear, it's me. So, and I'm going to make sure that his stuff is going to be represented here as much as possible, because it's cool. I mean, you got to say this. So, but you'll see more of that in further videos. We're going to go and have some fun at some carnival, and then come back and do more of this stuff for you. Get out of here now. Paul, from CIOKS CIOKS. Maybe we should say that this CIOKS CIOKS. Just say it all.
You can't make a longer word of it.
No, it's complicated enough. Bye-bye.